Hey, we are live from Michigan State University again. I'm driving home from the Union and we'll walk through the city of Lansing, East Lansing. In the meantime, we are also attending to the radio. What are they talking about? What is the topic for Americans? Let's go together and we're from the other side. There you go.
Scientists succeed. We look at the career of many scientists, asking many questions about how early we can say that the scientists will make a phenomenal discovery, at what age do they make those discoveries, and in general, how do we spot a promising scientist?
So you started with what you knew, the careers of scientists. But how did you go about trying to figure out whether Einstein's assumption that younger people achieve more was correct?
Well, the first thing we wanted to ask is this true only for highly accomplished individuals, or is creativity really peaks for ordinary scientists as well? So the first thing we did is that we reconstructed the career of hundreds of thousands of scientists, starting with physicists and biologists and so on, and asked, when did people make their best discovery? We didn't care whether there was a Nobel Prize discovery or something that was forgotten immediately. We just wanted to know that within a person's career, what was their best.
And you're saying the best is equated with the most public accolades that they got, or the most citations?
The most citations, because that's kind of a very measurable quantity that we can assign to scientific impact. It's debatable whether that really captures impact, but it's a very good proxy of that. And when we analyze all these careers, we were surprised that the vast majority of the scientists publish their highest impact work within the 15, maybe 20 years of their career, the first 15 or 20 years. And then after 20 years, the likelihood of publishing something of high impact falls dramatically. So for example, I'm about 30 years into my career, and the chances of me publishing a paper whose impact would overcome my earlier papers is less than 1%.
Well, that's depressing, huh?
On the face value, it's very depressing, and so was for me.
In a moment, how Albert Laszlo Barabashi found a silver lining for scientists and some lessons for all late bloomers. I'm Manoush Zomorodi, and you're listening to the TED Radio Hour from NPR. Stay with us.
And good afternoon. This is Michigan Public. I'm Mike Perini. Stay with us for the BBC NewsHour coming up at 4. Support from Michigan Public comes from Allergy and Immunology Associates of Michigan, offering evaluation and management of asthma, allergy, and other immunologic disorders, with appointments available in 7 office locations throughout Southeast Michigan. More at AnnArborAllergy.com. In Michigan Public, weather mostly sunny today, highs from the low 70s to around 80. An air quality advisory is in effect. Canadian wildfire smoke is expected to re-enter southern Michigan later this afternoon and this evening. Michigan Public is 91.7 in Ann Arbor and Detroit, 91.1 in Flint, 91.3 in Port Huron, 89.7 in Lansing, and 104.1 in Grand Rapids. It's 3:20.
Support for the TED Radio Hour comes from the Cy Sims Foundation. Since 1985, supporting advances in science, education, and the arts towards a fairer, more just, and civil society. More information is available at cysimsfoundation.org. From Indeed, committed to giving job listings increased visibility with relevant candidates through its sponsored jobs feature. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. And from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
It's the TED Radio Hour from NPR. I'm Manoush Zomorodi. On the show today, late bloomers. And before the break, we were talking to physicist and network scientist Albert Laszlo Barabashi, who left us with a pretty bleak statement.
I'm about 30 years into my career, And the chances of me publishing a paper whose impact would overcome my earlier papers is less than 1%.
This sounds grim, but Laszlo looked at the data and realized he was missing a control. Here he is on the TED stage.
So the control would be, how would a scientist look like who makes random contribution to science? Or what is the productivity of the scientist? When do they write papers? So we measured the productivity, and amazingly, the productivity, your likelihood of writing a paper in year 1, 10, or 20 in your career is indistinguishable from the likelihood of having the impact in that part of your career. And to make a long story short, after lots of statistical tests, there's only one explanation for that. That really the way we scientists work is that every single paper we write, every project we do has exactly the same chance of being our personal best. That is, discovery is like a lottery, right? And like a lottery ticket, and then the more lottery tickets we buy, the higher is the chance. And it happens to be so that most scientists buy most of their lottery tickets in the first 10, 15 years of their career. And after that, their productivity decreases. They're not buying any more lottery tickets. So it looks like as if they would not be creative. In reality, they stop trying. So when we actually put the data together, the conclusion is very simple. Success can come at any time. It could be your very first or very last paper of your career. It's totally random in the space of the projects. It is the productivity that changes.
So basically, scientists tend to put out more papers early in their careers, and therefore their chances of having an impact are greater. But as they get older, you found they're less productive for all kinds of reasons, and therefore their chances diminish.
Right. The conclusion is that there is no connection between creativity and age. There's only a connection between productivity and age. And if you as a scientist or any creative person are willing to continue trying over and over, you have the same chance of making a discovery later in your life or early in your life. For example, John Fenn was a chemist, and at 65, he was forcefully retired by Yale, but he was still full of ideas. So he moved to Virginia Commonwealth University, and it is there, after retirement, where he published a paper for which 15 years later, at age 85, got the Chemistry Nobel Prize.
So you have expanded your research beyond science and academia. You've started to research how these ideas apply to other fields, for example, entrepreneurship. What does success look like for entrepreneurs? When does it happen?
One of the areas where the equation youth equals creative is very strongly held is in the Silicon Valley, right? We can look at the founders of Google or Facebook and you name it, and you're seeing very, very young faces, at least the moment when they founded the company, they were in the 20s. And the press and the media is full with the image that youth equals kind of talent when it comes to starting a new company.
Well, it becomes a legend, doesn't it?
It does become a legend.
Right?
But when some of my colleagues actually looked at the data, they asked the question, what's the difference between a company funded by a young person versus funded by more elderly individuals? What's the likelihood of exit? That is that the company will either go on the stock market or be successfully sold.
You're reminding me of this moment in your TED Talk where you lay it on people, on the audience, that the chances of having a successful exit for an investor are far greater if you were to invest in a sort of midlife career entrepreneur. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes. And it turns out that, yes, those in the 20s and 30s put out a huge number of companies, form lots of companies, but most of them go bust. And when you look at the successful exits, what you see in this particular plot, the older you are, the more likely that you will actually hit the stock market or sell the company successfully. This is so strong, actually, that if you are in the 50s, you're twice as likely to actually have a successful exit than if you are in your 30s.
Surely though, it's more complicated than that, right? We're talking about investing, let's say, in a 50-year-old founder who maybe has had smaller successes as well, right? Like, it's not just like pick a random 50-year-old founder of a company, invest in them. What are some of the quantifiables that there need to be for that, the variables?
Of course, it's never random, right? You don't pick a person on the street based on the age profile and give them 200 million to start funding a company, right? And of course you should. If you have a talented young individual that you feel that he or she has what it takes to form a successful company, by all means bet on that. But at the same time, don't disregard the very practiced hand.
Okay, so Laszlo, I need to ask, the two fields we talked about, science and technology, those are dominated by white men, always have been, who could work in a far more linear fashion than, say, women who might have had their careers disrupted by pregnancies and childcare, and Black and brown people who may not have been given the same opportunities. So how do you factor in those two groups of people into your idea that success can come later in life?
This is actually a very important topic of research in my lab, and we specifically asked the question, what really distinguishes women and men scientists? Ethnicity and race is much harder to quantify, but gender is something that we can easily distinguish. And when we started this research, there were lots of previous results that were not encouraging. It indicated that when you look at the career of a woman scientist versus a man scientist, women have smaller career impact and smaller productivity. But when we looked much more carefully at the data, we realized that when we look at the yearly productivity of men and women, they are largely indistinguishable. Then why there is a career difference? Well, that's because at any year of their career, women have about 3% higher chance of leaving academia than men. You know, at every year people leave because they go to industry, because they have personal reasons, but at every year of their career, women are 3% more likely to leave the scientific career than men. As a result, women have shorter career as a group, seem to have lower productivity, and that explains the bulk of the difference in the impact as well.
Okay, so let's talk about a field where, you know, to measure performance, it's not that easy. Things get a little squishy. Art, the art world. I am reminded of something that you said, which I believe to artists, you said, tell me the first 5 places where you ever showed your art, and I will tell you the trajectory of your career. Did I get that right?
Yes. Art is a particularly interesting area, right? When it comes to art, it's all about networks. And what I mean by that is that if I look at this glass of water in front of me, is this an artwork or is this a glass of water? Well, it depends, right? If you see it in the MoMA under a glass box, it's a repurposed object that is acting as an artwork. And if you see it in my office, it's obviously a glass of water. So value in art only emerges through networks, meaning that who was the artist who put that glass there? What did that artist do before? What other museums have works by him or her? These are all network effects. So I like to study art, and in my lab we study art because art is the perfect example where only networks generate value.
Because the rest is so arbitrary.
I wouldn't call it arbitrary, it's community-based.
Community-based.
At the end, who gets rewarded and how for a given performance? It's fundamentally a network effect. Your performance is about you, but your success is about us as a community.
I'm so curious what you think about some of the movements that there have been in the last couple of years about younger people saying, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. There's the lie flat movement in China, here in the US, quiet quitting, people saying produce is draining us. As someone who studies success and how to get it, What do you think of all that?
There is such a thing as internal success that is not quantifiable. And that's really the most important thing. I would consider internal success my children, right? That I have 3 children that I'm very proud of. And even internal success is the fact when I climb a mountain, right? These are the little pleasures of life that are unmeasurable to us scientists. But if you do seek success in the way we use the word success, then you better engage with it on its own terms, and you better understand the patterns and the laws that govern it. Because not everybody needs to go to the moon. But if you want to go to the moon, you better understand the laws of gravity.
And I'm guessing the next thing that you'd say is be persistent.
That's the key to the story, right? Because so don't believe that creativity vanishes with age. Creativity doesn't. The willingness to try, that's what vanishes. And if you can overcome that, you have a chance for success no matter your age.
That's physicist and network scientist Albert Laszlo Barabashi. His book is called The Formula, The Universal Laws of Success. You can see his full talk at TED.com. On the show today, late bloomers. Ideas about thriving throughout our lives, including our later years. Ashton.
Yes.
May I ask you how old you are?
Of course.
Some people get very offended by that question.
Well, that's sort of the heart of the matter. Why should we be offended at saying how old we are? I just turned 70.
I don't know whether, so I'm of an age when I remember when it was impolite to ask a lady how old they were.
Well, and there you have hit also on the aspect that aging is...
These people are you. You can ask me my age. I just turned 10. I just turned 60. I just turned 40. I don't care. I'm as old as Ethiopia. I'm as old as my mission. As old as my vision. There are people who multiply their age. There are people who produce amazing things in very short time. There are people who are very old but they did nothing. So the most important thing is it's not about the number of years. I think I'll remind the Ethiopia members and whoever had gets a chance to listen to this discussion today. The first thing is about early or late blooming. When is the time that you get spark? When you get started? When you start living your dream? When you get started to make impact in our world? If I tell you my example, when I started Yes Ethiopia is 6 years ago, 7 years ago. When I started serving the public is the time when I was in high school. But I might not have a really specific focus when I was young, but now I've learned to be very specific, very clear, very consistent, and accept also I also have weaknesses. I also make some very silly, annoying, and shameful mistakes. Still, I also have some great stories and great experiences. And I should be confident enough to say, this is my strength. This is my idea. I have my weakness. I have my shortcomings. I'm learning from them. I'm growing every day. It's not about the number of white hairs you have. It's not about your PhD. It's not about your first degree. It's not about if you are a man or a woman. It's not about if you are in Africa or in US or wherever. The thing is, do you value who you are? Do you agree with the power of action? Do you forgive? Are you willing to grow? Are you willing to collaborate? I think these are very, very important things, and these are deep within the value of Yes Ethiopia. So, if you have been to this point, if you had the chance to listen to this discussion, please feel free to share, comment, and also contribute your ideas. And thanks so much from Youth and Education Support Service Ethiopia from Yes Ethiopia.